take care of it. Meanwhile, we're on the radio trying to call the quick reaction force. I did not let him get out of the vehicle because people were angry. They were worried, they were upset. And, and who wouldn't be? Yeah. And eventually, long short of it is, the quick reaction force showed up. They provided a cordon. They went out and called the police. The police came. They started talking to the crowd. They let us go. The lady was fine. She was a very elderly woman. She was being accompanied by her grandson, who was right behind her and didn't do anything, which that's a totally different story. But the whole point of it was, after that, I felt really, really horrible about it because this was some old woman that we hit, and we weren't going that fast. But at the time, all I could think is, it was just so crazy that I'm probably going to be involved with some investigation or something, and I'm not going to be able to leave. And at that point, I really just wanted to go home and see my family. So I was at the point of wanting to be part of the team, wanting to be there, but also wanting to leave and go home because I've been around, for a long time there. So it was just it was a crazy period, and then I felt horrible for this lady because nobody wants to get run over. But in the end, she was fine, and she made it, and I made it home, 2 weeks later. But it was just those two incidents I think stick back in my head. That last one is just silly and horrible. It's like a traffic accident. It's not something you think that you're going to be involved with when you're in a combat theater. But the first one I think was probably the most horrific one.
Very traumatic incidents.
Yeah, they are in different ways. I feel like the first one did way more to me in terms of making me wonder if maybe what I was doing was, it enters your mind, at least, I'm not sure with other nations, but in the U.S. side, you volunteer for it. It's something you weren't drafted to go do, you weren't conscripted to go do it. You volunteered to go do this job, and you do it, and then you realize at some point that it's super dangerous and something could go horribly wrong. And then when it does and you're not there, then you're kind of happy that you weren't in the room, right? But at the same time, you realize you could be in the room, and if you were in the room, it would just be over. Or worse, you would be injured in some horrible fashion and having to recover and deal with all that. So, yeah. Anyway.
You talked a lot about your job entailing working very closely with the Afghans, and certainly one of the challenges that the military had there, and correct me if I'm wrong, were the fact that they couldn't identify Taliban members because you couldn't differentiate between civilians and Taliban members based on the way they dressed necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
That made you even more vulnerable, didn't it, really?
Yes. You never really, unfortunate thing about that whole part of our military history now is that you couldn't always tell, and you weren't sure if the person that you were working with was on your side or the Taliban side or both sides, and that kind of made it very difficult. I think particularly for me, working with the mentorship role of it, you wondered, am I inadvertently giving trade secrets to somebody who's going to turn it around and do something bad to me and the people that I work with? I don't know. There was always that kind of ever-present worry. Or, the interpreter that I'm working with, is the interpreter also working with somebody bad? How much am I telling this person? You find yourself wondering if what you're telling whoever it is that you're working with is going to somebody that you wouldn't want to tell. And that was always the challenge with it. I think in the military, you want to think of good guy versus bad guy, the enemy versus us, right? And it never felt like that in that campaign. You never really, there were obvious Taliban, right? But then you always wondered if somebody was not so obvious Taliban, or Bakhani, or any of those agents. So that's difficult. And for me as a communicator, it was super difficult because I'm always trying to find the happy story. I'm trying to find the good story. I'm trying to find the silver lining. I'm trying to find the things that are going well. It's difficult to tell stories when things aren't going well.
And you obviously formed close relationships as well.
Yeah, yeah. I got very close to my interpreter, Aman. He was a son. He was, I think, the 8th son of a Ministry of Defense, like general officer in the Afghan security forces, and he was the only one that didn't join the military. Now he was studying to be a doctor, and he got married. Yeah, while I was there, actually. He had asked for like a week or 2 off or something so that he could go and get married, which I was like, yeah, that's a big thing. Yes, you should take some time off. And I didn't really think anything of it, because why wouldn't you do that? And we had conversations all the time, because he spoke brilliant English. He was working as an interpreter during the day, and at night he was going to medical school. So I don't know when he slept. And the fact that he had a relationship and got married in the middle of all that, and his relationship, his wife now, I guess, was a doctoral student, I think, or something too. And I think at that point I was really particularly impressed with the fact that this is Afghanistan, a country that has had notorious problems with women's rights and ability to be educated and all that. And the fact that he was marrying somebody who was also educated, I was very impressed with. I thought that's the new Afghanistan. That's where the things are going. So I was really impressed. Well, at the end of that period of time, I was giving gifts. In fact, that was a funny experience in that I showed up to give gifts and say my goodbyes, because I was redeploying back. And they somehow got wires crossed and told me